Good afternoon. This is Pastor David Charlton. It's Saturday, September the 25th, 2021. This is my third devotion for the week. And again, this week we are still talking about Jacob. Today I want to take a little detour. Somebody asked me recently about why God permitted bigamy and polygamy in the Old Testament when the Ten Commandments seem to command that we are faithful to one wife. And likewise, in the beginning, God created one man and one woman, not one man and many women. So why was it permitted? A good place to start here is to start with part of the story of Jacob that we won't be reading tomorrow. This is from chapter 29, verses 15 through 30. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." And Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her." And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "It must not be done so in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years." Then Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Then Jacob also went in to Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban still another 7 years. So this is the story of Jacob, the patriarch of Israel, having 2 wives. So it's a little confusing. But we need to remember that in the beginning it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and many women. And the marriage of 2 wives doesn't come in until the 4th chapter of Genesis. And in that case it's Lamech, who is the great-great-great-grandson of Cain. So the line of Cain were sort of a line of sinners, of rule breakers. The line of Seth, the younger brother of Cain, was the line that would lead to Noah and to the people of Israel. So the first time anyone's recorded having more than one wife, it's from the line of Cain. And later on we hear of the story of Sarah and Hagar. And Hagar was not a wife, but she was a concubine. But almost always in the Bible, when you hear of a man having 2 wives, it ends badly. So there was conflict between Sarah and Hagar, and between their sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And a lot of that conflict caused a lot of pain and harm. And the stories are told there. And then we have the story that we hear about Rachel and Leah, and how Jacob loved one more than the other. And again, there is a rivalry between the sisters. And they even get their slaves into the rivalry, and seeing who can have the most children for Jacob. Later on in the book of Leviticus, it is forbidden for a man to marry his wife's sister. Later on in the story of Samuel, we hear about Elkanah, who had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had lots of children, and she would taunt Hannah. So again, when a man has more than one wife, it brings heartbreak to his wives and also to his children. You'll see that in the story of David as well. But how do we interpret what is permitted in the Bible and what is God's intent? So to do that, we go to the book of Matthew and we hear from Jesus himself. Matthew 19, 1 through 9. Now it came to pass, when Jesus had finished these sayings, that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him, and saying to him, Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? And he answered and said to them, Have you not read what he who made them at the beginning? Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So then, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to him, Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. His disciples said to him, If such is the case of the man with his wife, it is better not to marry. So Jesus said it was permitted because of the hardness of men's hearts. In other words, God permits things that are sinful, but it is not God's plan that it be so. So in the beginning in Genesis, we see one man and one woman. And Jesus reaffirms that. That is what God desires. Now, God accommodates sinners so that he might bless them. And we need to remember that God accommodates us too. There are things that are part of our laws today that are less than God's will. We permit sinful things because it would be worse if we tried to prohibit them. We just couldn't do it. And so we need to understand that in some of the practices in the Old Testament, God permits them, but that doesn't mean God approves of them. And so we need to make that distinction. But Jesus says from the beginning it was not so. And all of the Old Testament seems to have a polemic against having more than one wife. Because every time a man has more than one wife, he brings heartache on his wives and on his children and on himself. As if, in spite of the fact that it was permitted, the Word of God is teaching us that that's not the way he meant it to be. So in the Christian church, from the very beginning, the standard was one husband, one wife. And it never has been any different. And that's how we understand what God's will is. God permitted things because people were hard-hearted, but it's not God's will. And so the standard for Christians has always been one man, one wife. And so we likewise ought to think about what are the things that are permitted in our culture, even though they're not good. For instance, we found out that you can't prohibit alcohol. Alcohol causes a lot of problems. Many people try not to drink at all. But to try to outlaw it will only make things worse. And so in the civil law, there's things that we Christians believe are not according to the will of God. But we permit them because to try to prevent them would just make things worse. And so I think that's how we ought to understand the permitting of polygamy and bigamy in the Old Testament. It was human beings' sinful tendency that made them want to have more than one wife. But it wasn't God's plan. God permitted it because people were sinful. But It was not God's intent in creation. And since the time of Jesus Christ, it has been the standard of one man and one woman for life. So I hope that helps you understand that a little bit more. Thank you very much, and may God bless you on your journey. Goodbye.